Revved Up, ladies and gentlemen, your new favorite NASCAR podcast. Because we have to tell you that almost every single episode, and yeah, pretty much that. But welcome to yet another episode where we talk about Tyler Reddick and nothing about Tyler and nothing but Tyler Reddick. Because that's been the theme these past 3 weeks. But all seriousness though, I am your host, Carter Leonard, back at it by my lonesome once again. But if you could tell from a little bit of the audio in this episode when I talk, I am currently in a different location right now because I am home for spring break right now. And you might be wondering why on God's green earth is your break this early? I couldn't answer that for you. It just sort of happened. They planned this out way in advance. So there you go with that. But anyways, I'm here doing what I need to do each and every single week. And welcome to the first ever episode of the month of March. So already 2 months down of 2026 as we now are into, as of the upload of this episode, it'll be March 5th on a Thursday. So happy Thursday to all of you amazing people. And yeah, also March is definitely one of my favorite times of the year because I get to really celebrate my Irish heritage, which, I mean, I can always do that anyways, considering the fact that it's, already embedded into me, or embedded into me, I should say, excuse me. But, yeah, it's officially, St. Patrick's month. So, yeah, definitely exciting times. Make sure you wear your green, ladies and gentlemen. Otherwise, you will get pinched. Not by me, per se. Obviously I can't reach through the screen and just, pinch you or anything like that. I wouldn't do that anyways, because that's just... Is that considered assault? In a way, or something like that. I'm not entirely sure. But anyways, rapidly moving on. Welcome to the 5th episode of the year, or right around that, I believe. It's either 5th or 6th. I've lost count, but we'll know by the end of this episode once it's officially uploaded. But let's get into the introduction part of today's episode. We have a lot to talk about on today's episode, especially with NASCAR history being made in its 77-year tenure as a professional motorsport, with Tyler Reddick going 3-0 to begin the season, which has never been done before in the history of NASCAR. So, regardless of where you were watching from on Sunday from Circuit of the Americas, we were witnessing history, and I think it's important that we do celebrate this history because I don't know what the odds of this happening again are, especially when you start out the season with 2 super speedway style races back to back, and then the third race being a road course. I mean, 2 wild forms of racing in current NASCAR today. So, but we also have a lot of other things to talk about. We had an O'Reilly Auto Parts Series race this past Saturday as well, and then we also had the Truck Series race at St. Petersburg for the first time ever, which caught a lot of people off guard with how good the racing was, because a lot of people, when this race was first announced, a lot of people initially thought that it was going to be a bit of a, not a good race, what show. You could already interpret what that word means, but we're a family friendly podcast. We try to keep it as family friendly as possible on the show, but yeah, a lot of people thought it was going to be just not a good product and it was going to be a little bit of a wreck fest, but we were very, very pleased to see how good of racing that it was. I mean, yeah, you had your occasional, miss corners sort of thing where somebody would shoot the entry too far and they would, have to turn around and try to get back going and lose a lot of position. Then you had the occasional spin outs here and there, but honestly, there wasn't any big pileups or anything like that, which St. Petersburg, we talked about it in last week's episode. There's a little bit of room to work with that course. So you have a little bit of wiggle room to work with, and you try to maneuver through the best way that you possibly can. And there you go. So, but before we get into the weekend recap, let's discuss how I'm doing a little bit. I'm doing terrific. Like I mentioned, home from spring break for spring break. Back at home, celebrating, just spending time with my family right now and just having a ball, really. That's really all that you could ask for in regards to the break. I had a few other school assignments that I needed to complete and do before I went, well, not before I went home. Well, there was before I went home, but there was some that I had to do during, and there wasn't anything too out of ordinary with that. So there you go with that. That's how I've been doing. But hope you guys who are listening to this, podcast, hope you guys are doing well. I really love hearing what you guys, have to say in regards to how you've been doing, and hopefully your day's been going as good as mine. So let's get into the weekend recap, ladies and gentlemen. Let's start off. Let's continue talking about the St. Petersburg truck race for a second. Lane Riggs, 30 driver the number 34 truck for Front Row Motorsports, picked up his first win of the 2026 season and his first ever road course win as well. The 23-year-old from Bahama, North Carolina, and the son of former Cup Series veteran Scott Riggs picked up his first win of the season this past Saturday. And let me just say, when it came to drivers who I thought were going to be in the mix all day long, obviously I had Caden Honeycutt. If you listened to the last week's episode, I had Caden Honeycutt winning this race, and he was inside the top 10 at one point during the race, but he got spun out late and lost a few positions. I wonder if he finished. I can't recall correctly if he did finish top 10, but regardless, Lane Riggs was actually one of the last few people, believe it or not, and I know this is going to sound crazy, but hear me out. He was one of the last few people that I thought was going to win this race, not because I don't have any faith in Riggs to go out and compete. It's because when you think of Lane Riggs, and yes, I was one of those people, when you think of Lane Riggs, you think of a guy who's going to dominate on short tracks, and he's starting to get better at the larger ovals, whether it's mile-and-a-half tracks or super speedways. Not necessarily a road course guy by any stretch of the imagination, but he actually started, I believe, 28th and made up so many positions throughout the entire race. And he at one point in stage one, he went as high as to 7th, and that's when he really started to grab people's attention by saying, "Oh, that 34 truck is looking very, very strong today." Of course, you had other strong trucks in the field, mainly the ThorSport Racing duo of the 88 of Ty Majeski and the 99 truck of Ben Rhodes, respectively. Ben Rhodes won the first stage, and he actually won pole for this race as well. Rhodes was a very big name for the day. And of course, there was a lot of other part-time entries as well. You had James Hinchcliffe driving the 77 truck for Spire Motorsports, Colin Braun, who drove the 25 for Colleague Racing in their Ram entry. Of course, the legendary Dario Franchitti in the one truck for Tricon Garage in partnership with Jimmy Johnson and Legacy Motor Club. Just a lot of interesting names as well in this field, just a lot of notable names. But Lane Riggs was able to get the lead back in stage 3. And I believe he was able to win stage 2 as well. So he was able to go ahead and win stage 2, pick up some stage points for the chase for this year. But then you started seeing the 88 truck of Ty Majeski start to close in on the 34, and you're thinking, oh man, this is going to be a battle between these two Fords. And then Ty Majeski takes the lead early in the stage 3, but then going into the final corner to lead his first lap of the day, Majeski cooks the entry a little bit and goes wide, giving the wide open lane for the 34 truck to get the lead back, and Lane Riggs would never relinquish the lead throughout the rest of the green flag run, and that included green flag pit stops, which, of course, the 88 and 99 were able to get back up to the top spot and try to battle for the lead, but the 34 truck was still strong enough to hang on, and Lane Riggs was able to pick up his first win. And I really loved his post-race interview, too, when he was asked by, Fox, how does it feel, getting the road course when he's just like, hey, it's good to let people know that the driver from Bahama, Georgia can win on road courses, too. So Lane Riggs, one of a few Ford prospects in the field, is still doing what he needs to do in the Truck Series, and he's currently one of my championship favorites this year. And I don't think that's really an insane statement to say, because it feels like every single year Lane Riggs, since joining FRM full-time for 2024, in 2024, I should say, excuse me, it feels like he's gotten better every single year. And I think that's one thing you have to really look out for. Obviously, does he have the racing resume of a Connor Zilic or the raw talent of a guy like, let's say, Corey Heim, or Brent Cruz or anything like that. He may not be at that level, but he's still a prospect that I'm sure that a lot of teams are going to definitely look out for. I really hope Lane gets at least a few part-time O'Reilly Series starts, or if FRM wants to open up their Cup car a little bit more and try to get more part-time entries involved, then maybe we'll see what happens there. But for now, he is doing what he needs to do in the Truck Series, and I honestly think it's going to lead to a bunch of more opportunities in the higher series from here on out. But big congrats to Lane Riggs, and you can only imagine that his experience at the bigger tracks and road courses are going to get better. Which I also I also forgot to mention this as soon as we moved on. Well, not as soon as we moved on, but as we were about to move on, that he was asked, how did your road course racing get better? And apparently during the offseason, he's been working with road course extraordinaire and another Ford racing driver in Joey Hand. Joey Hand, a former Rolex 24 winner. He's won a bunch of other prestigious sports car races as well and been a part of amazing wins as well. When you have Joey Hand mentoring you during the offseason to get better at road courses, there's a good chance that your road course knowledge is going to double than what it already was beforehand. And I honestly think that this was definitely beneficial for him. So don't be surprised if Lane Riggs continues to compete more and more at road courses as the season goes on. But this is a great start for him. Now moving on from one road course to another, Saturday's O'Reilly Auto Parts Series event saw a pretty solid race for the most part, and it also saw Shane Van Gisbergen finally get that elusive COTA win for the first time in the National Series star, which is something that we talked about in last week's episode, that Shane Van Gisbergen, being the road course racer that he is, that before going into this weekend, he has not won a road course not a road course race. He's won multiple of those. He's not won a race at COTA in either two of the National Series that he has been in both the O'Reilly Series and Cup Series. But he was able to do that in a part-time effort with Junior Motorsports' 9 car this past weekend. Connor Zilch was also in the field as well, driving the 1 car for JRM as well. And you saw, a lot of other drivers in the field, get up there as well with likes of Zilch and Van Gisbergen. Mainly 17-year-old Brent Cruz making his first ever start with Joe Gibbs Racing and the O'Reilly Series in general, was able to get up front in stage 2 and lead multiple laps and come home in 6th. So for your first ever time racing in a competitive field like that, and correct me if I'm wrong, he really doesn't have any prior testing in this car at all prior to this race, but he does have Brent Cruz, like Connor Zilch, does have a very impressive racing resume behind him. He's won a lot of dirt midget races. He is a former TA2 Trans Am champion. He's won late model races in the Cars Tour, and now he's also won ARCA races as well, while also making some part-time starts in the Truck Series for Tricon Garage last year. This year, he is now going to be, aside from missing 4 races due to the current NASCAR age limits, he will be pretty much the full-time driver of the 19 car for Joe Gibbs Racing this year, and he made his first start of the year this past week at COTA. So if we were doing the golf clap segment with Emma this week, which Emma still has yet to make an appearance on the show this week, we deeply apologize for that, but she'll be on soon. I would definitely give mine to Brent Cruz, just for the fact that he's still only 17 years old, still has a long way to go in this sport. But the hope that for Joe Gibbs Racing is that they make him probably the next star of their team, which could happen, could not happen. We'll just have to wait and see. But back to the overall race, SVG able to finally get that COTA win. It wasn't a question of if, it was just a question of how many times, and so far it's been once so far. So he was able to get that, and that is now his 5th career win in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series since coming to the States and started racing for NASCAR. So big win for them in Junior Motorsports. They'll be ringing the victory bell for the first time this year, so that'll be cool to see. And Chevy has won the first 3 races of the year for the O'Reilly Series, which honestly is not a major surprise, because I looked up an interesting fact popped up this weekend about the O'Reilly Auto Parts series, and it shows that only Ford, one Ford was in the race in the mix of Chevys and some Toyotas, and that was the 25 car of AM Racing for Nick Sanchez. There was supposed to be another Ford in the field, and that was the Hettinger Racing number 5 entry, but they were not able to make it in on speed, and they ended up being disqualified. So I don't know how much of that we will see later on this year, because while AM Racing does have owner and driver's points to go off of, Hettinger Racing really doesn't have that leverage. So that's just something to keep in mind personally. So, but yeah, back to the main topic at hand. SVG, big win. He was able to do the rugby punt afterwards. And, but this race also saw, yet for the second week in a row, or basically third week in a row, another incident involving the 17 car of Corey Day, who's the Hendrick Motorsports developmental driver and a full-time rookie in the series this year, that in the S's at one point late in the going, Day made contact with the one car of Connor Zilisch, spinning him out. Luckily, Zilisch was able to finish the race, but he had some choice words for Corey Day in the post-race interview. Now, Zilisch did not confront him, as it was quoted saying, I don't need to go, I believe the exact quote was, I don't need to go confront him and tell him that he's an idiot. He can already do that to him himself. So, Zilisch and Day, not that far off in age between each other. But Zilisch currently a Cup Series rookie right now, while Corey Day is still pretty new to the stock car, world. So, me and Adam gave Corey Day some choice words last week, and we were thinking to ourselves, you know what, he's still new to this, and he still has time to improve to a certain extent. But the last thing that you want to do is make enemies, especially when you're this young. You're not even at the Cup level yet. You do not want to make enemies in any way, shape, or form. That's the last thing you would want to do, and I think Corey Day definitely knows that, and if he didn't know it then, well, he definitely did now, because it was reported earlier this week that Rick Hendrick and Corey Day had a bit of a sit-down talk. Now, I don't see Corey Day getting demoted out of his seat this season. I definitely don't see that. I don't believe it was that intense, but I believe Rick Hendrick, being the owner that he is, and how he wants his drivers to really succeed, because him, Kyle Larson, and Jeff Gordon, they see a lot of potential in Corey Day. Corey Day is a terrific dirt car driver. He is a terrific sprint car driver. He's trying to make a name for himself on asphalt. There's going to be growing pains. I'm not saying, Day, should be completely ridiculed of it. But I believe the conversation probably went something on the lines of, hey, I believe in you. We believe in you. But you just got to clean this up. And if you do, you'll be just fine. Despite the incident, Corey Day was able to score a top 5 finish at Circuit of the Americas. I believe he placed 4th in the race, if I remember correctly. 5th. Okay, he finished 5th. So he is coming off of 2 straight top 5 finishes at Atlanta and COTA. And while those are good finishes to have, you definitely want to build momentum off of that. You also got to keep in mind how those top 5s came about, because he caused multiple incidents at Atlanta that left drivers like Ryan Sieg, for instance, fuming. And while Connor Zilisch wasn't the most PO driver at the end of COTA, he didn't appreciate it to the lesser. So hopefully Corey Day, with each opportunity that he has going to every single race, every single week, that he has a chance to tell himself, okay, I want to go out there and compete. I want to go out there and be aggressive. But I know that there are times where if I let the aggressiveness get the better of me, it's going to hurt me in the long run. And I might not, get the respect that I deserve. Which honestly, when you're at the racetrack, you're not there to make friends. You're out there to go and compete. And you're out there to try to be the best that you could possibly be. And I think Corey Day has that mentality, but it's just one of those younger driver things where you gotta fix your mistakes. And I believe Rick Hendrick and Corey Day can definitely be a good combination if Corey Day just cleans it up. Because I think talent for Corey Day is there. I think he has the capability of doing well in stock cars. Maybe not at the Kyle Larson level, but maybe at a solid level. He can be solid. And honestly, I see the parallels between both Day and Larson. Obviously, not because of the dirt background, but because both can have speed, but also there are times where both can make stupid mistakes. Larson, for instance, as we mentioned before, had that one incident at Atlanta where he turned down in front of Shane Van Gisbergen and completely wrecked himself in the 97 car when there was no reason to do that. So that's my whole take on this whole thing. If Corey Day, cleans up the aggressiveness and he starts performing well, I think he'll be just fine. But if we keep starting to see a repeating pattern of this and we see him continue to make mistakes and it's more and more egregious each time, which I'm not saying Corey Day is going into I'm not saying he's going into every single race like saying, yeah, I'm going to intentionally wreck someone. That's not what I'm saying, but like I mentioned before, when you keep making those mistakes, you're going to be looked down upon. And you're going to be looked down upon, and you're going to have people look at you from under a microscope saying, man, does this guy really deserve to be here the way he drives? So that's really all there is to it. But now let's talk about Tyler Reddick and going 3-0 to begin the season, which, as I mentioned at the top of the show, has never been done before in the 75-plus year history of NASCAR. Now, winning the first two races to start out the year has been done before. As we mentioned before, Reddick became the first driver after Atlanta since Matt Kenseth in 2009 that was able to go and win the first two races of the year at both Daytona and Atlanta. And we're kind of thinking to ourselves, okay, the 45 team definitely seems to know what they're doing right now, but we're going to go to Circuit of the Americas where, SVG is going to be the car to beat. And we all know how good he is at road courses, and he just won the race the day before in the O'Reilly Series. So that he's going to be tough to beat. But Reddick managed to put the 45 car on pole, and we're all thinking to ourselves, 3 in a row might be in reach here. So now, at the beginning of the race, it didn't get started off like that. Reddick was able to lead a few laps, but you also saw the 12 car of Ryan Blaney get off to a quick start. Blaney had one of the best 10-lap averages in practice and had one of the best qualifying runs of the weekend. So the 12 car, which I don't believe Ryan Blaney has won a road course race since 2018, which was the very first Charlotte Roval race. But there have been times where Blaney does show speed on road courses, and he's able to qualify inside the top 10. So this was just another one of those moments with the added question of, can Ryan Blaney finally end his road course win drought and finally get back to victory lane? But Shane Van Gisbergen was able to climb his way through the field. It didn't come without its trials and tribulations, of course, but also you had the 88 car of Connor Zilisch in there as well. Zilisch didn't really have the best practice or qualifying out there as well, but he was able to climb. He was the guy who passed the most cars the entire day. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, he passed the field like 3 times almost and still managed a 14th place finish. He could have had a top 5 finish. He was as high as 4th the entire race, but got spun out numerous times in turn 1, and that didn't really help his case at all. So that was tough to see, but you live and you learn as you go on. Connor Zilisch still a very big road course threat, and I think Sunday proved that, even though the result didn't show. But back to Tyler Reddick. Reddick managed to stay inside the top 10 for pretty much the entire day. There was a few times where the 45 didn't have they had pace, but you could see that they weren't as dominant as you had thought they would be after they qualified on the pole. But late race cautions were able to work in the 45's favor, and SVG was climbing to the field as well, and you're thinking to yourself, oh, this is where the 97 car is going to show its strength right here. He's going to pass the 45 car, and he's going to drive away to the sunset and pick up his first road course win and continue his climb to be the all-time leading winner in road course in NASCAR history, surpassing Jeff Gordon. However, though, that did not happen. Once the 45 got back out front, he never relinquished the lead, and he pulled away from Shane Van Gisbergen. And SVG at one point even apologized over the radio saying, sorry guys, I just don't have it right now. Even though there were still a lot of laps to go, which as a crew chief, you're still encouraging your driver to keep pushing no matter what, because you never know what could happen in the last 5 to 6 laps of a race if a caution comes out, because that changes the complexity entirely. But a late race caution never happened, and Tyler Reddick was able to become the first ever driver to win 3 races to begin a season. And once again, Michael Jordan at the racetrack was able to see his car win for the 3rd straight week in a row. Tyler Reddick has always been a top 5 talent in NASCAR ever since he got his first career win when he was driving the 8 car for Richard Childress Racing. And if these past 3 weeks didn't already prove that, then I don't know what will. Like, obviously, yes, at both Daytona and Atlanta, you need some level of luck to get through and win the race. But road courses, with how difficult they've been with SVG running the show, you're thinking to yourself, oh, this is where the streak is to come to an end. But nope, the 45 cars stayed in it throughout the entire day. And I just find it funny how Monster Energy left this team. Like, there's no Monster logos on the 45. They still sponsor Riley Herbst, but that's a completely different sponsorship. But Monster Energy left the 45 car, Tyler Reddick, and as soon as they did that, he wins the first 3 races of the year. So I bet they're regretting that, personally. But, you know, it's just one of those things, man. But Chumba Casino and Pinnacle, I mean, their stocks are through the roof right now, I would love to imagine. But Tyler Reddick gets it done for the 3rd straight week in a row, his 11th career win, and he also becomes the first repeat winner since NASCAR has been going to the Circuit of the Americas since 2021. From 21 to 25, we've had 5 different winners, and Reddick was the 2023 winner, which was, as we mentioned before, his first ever win driving for 2311 Racing. And now he picks up his 11th career win in his, I forget how many road course wins he has now, but 3 out of his first 4 Cup Series victories came on road courses. So Tyler Reddick still proving that he's still a threat to win on road courses. And not only that, it was my first podcast pick win of the year. It only took me 3 races, but I was so confident that Tyler Reddick and the 45 team, led by Billy Scott as his crew chief, were going to be a threat all day long that I couldn't resist picking him. While Emma and Adam picked the SVG, not the SVG cars, the Trackhouse cars, I was just like, something about that 45 just screams that he's going to win 3 in a row. So, once again, for the 3rd straight week in a row, Reddick leads the points alongside his 2311 Racing teammate Bubba Wallace. So, 2311 Racing still hold the top 2 in points right now. Let's take a look at the point standings. Chase Elliott comes home, is 3rd in points, with Ryan Blaney 4th, and Shane Van Gisbergen 5th. SVG coming off back-to-back top 10 finishes. He finished 6th at Atlanta, and of course finished runner-up at Circuit of the Americas. So nice couple of runs for the 97 car. Of course, Atlanta, you know, it was an up-and-down day for him, but we all knew how good he was going to be at COTA as well. Joey Logano is 6th in points right now. He now has a top 5 finish. Daniel Suarez 7th, coincidentally, in the 7 car. AJ Allmendinger 8th in points. Michael McDowell 9th. And Carson Hocevar rounds at the top 10 in points. Of course, the chase is 16 drivers. So you have Chris Buescher 11th and Brad Keselowski in 12th. Which, speaking of which, we mentioned Joey Hand at the beginning of the show when he was mentoring Lane Riggs. Brad Keselowski was an interesting storyline going into this weekend because there was a possibility that the 2012 Cup Series champion was not going to be able to complete the entire duration of the race because of him still recovering from that skiing accident. Now he was cleared the race at both Daytona and Atlanta, as well as Coda, but they had Joey Hand on standby just in case Brad wasn't able to finish the race. But BK was able to complete every single lap of the race, so big shout out to him. William Byron 13th in points, Zane Smith 14th, Kyle Larson 15th, and Ryan Preece curling rounds out the 16th in points. Chase standings right now. Of course, this is very subjective to change as time passes along. We're already 3 races in, and we've had wild 3 races to start out: 2 super speedway races and 1 road course. So take this with a massive grain of salt. I mean, I expect guys like Reddick, Elliott, Blaney, Byron, Larson. I expect those guys to be in there as well. But I mean, who knows? Carson Hocevar could definitely stay in there as well. But yeah, so big congratulations to Tyler Reddick and the number 45 team for 23-11 racing. So with that will do it for the weekend recap portion of the show. And while we're at it, let's take a look at the podcast points. This is something that I have been waiting for all week, if you ask me, because you know me, anytime when I get the lead in points, I always love discussing about it. So this will be the first time that I've led this year. So with Tyler Reddick winning, I am awarded 15th points. So now I lead going into week 4 with 17 points. Emma had a big jump in points. This was the first time, I believe, in podcast points history that she is second in points aside from third, because she picked SVG to win and SVG finished second. So with a top 5 finish, she is awarded 10 points. So that moves her to 12 points in second. And Adam had a bit of a rough day. He managed to get a single point from the 88 car of Connor Zilch. While Zilch was able to finish, he comes home in 14th. So 11th or below awards you only 1 point. So Adam is now third with just 7 points to his name after leading the past couple of weeks. So those are what the Revved Up podcast points look like heading into this week's action at Phoenix. Can I maintain my lead for another week? We'll just have to wait and see, as I only lead by 5, and who knows how scrambled this will get as time passes along. One last thing that we will talk about before going away from Coda, and I forgot to mention this, this is something that we not love talking about, but something that did happen. We did see afterwards that a lot of drivers were exhausted. The high temperature for Austin, Texas, I believe was approximately 81 degrees, so you can only imagine how warm it was inside those race cars and how much shifting and just overall discomfort was inside those cars. But that's what race car drivers do at the end of the day. They're trying to fight it out the best they can, especially for the 48 team of Alex Bowman. Bowman was complaining about being exhausted inside the car, and at one point had pulled the car behind the garage area because Bowman was unable to complete the race by himself. So they called up on former O'Reilly Auto Parts Series driver Myatt Snyder to fill in for the 48 for the rest of the way, and Myatt Snyder was able to finish the race. I forget which finishing position it was for Myatt Snyder. I would have to find it real quick. And the official results are saying that Myatt Snyder came home 36th place finish. So not the result the 48 team for Hendrick Motorsports were definitely looking for, but you have to admire Myatt Snyder, being able to step up when needed, and I'm sure Hendrick Motorsports definitely appreciated that. There was also Eric Jones, driver of the 43 car for Legacy Motor Club, who was also dealing with some discomfort and had Harrison Burton on standby duty. Burton, of course, the full-time driver for Sam Hunt Racing in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series and a fellow Toyota driver as well. But, of course, Eric Jones was able to finish the entire race. So you had that take place. And then you also had the 16 car of AJ Allmendinger as well for Colleague Racing, who received medical attention after getting out of the car. Allmendinger was able to wheel his number 16 Chevrolet to a top 10 finish, finishing 9th. But as soon as AJ got out of the car, he was absolutely exhausted. They showed a camera shot when Reddick was celebrating on the front stretch that AJ looked like he had passed out. Thankfully, AJ and Alex Bowman were able to be relieved from the infield care center, and they were okay. And they look forward to competing at Phoenix this upcoming weekend. So, you know, drivers being exhausted after a hot day at the racetrack, of course, is still a very common thing. Um, Obviously, we're in the month of March, and it's not summer as of yet, but there are parts of the country that get extremely warm during this time, and a state like Texas is absolutely no different. So glad to see that all those drivers were in the best hands possible, and they were all okay. Moving on to the next couple of topics on this show, ladies and gentlemen, we have a decent amount of news to talk about, especially with driver news, some sponsorship news, and just a few other things as well to discuss. So, Richard Childress Racing. We all know what RCR is, and they compete full-time in both Cup and the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series. Today, as of recording this episode, it was announced that they will be fielding a third part-time entry, the 33 car for the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series this year for 3 races, with Cletus McFarland behind the wheel of the number 33 car for Richard Childress Racing, beginning at Rockingham, then at Talladega, and the Daytona Summer Race this year. McFarland also came on the Dale Jr. Download to announce this deal, saying it's also a 2-year deal as well, meaning that he will make part-time starts in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series. For Richard Childress Racing as well. And if you hear my door closing, my dad was in the room and he was able to give me a glass of water. So thank you, Dad, for that. Very unexpected, but gotta love the family at the end of the day. But back to the overall topic of Cletus McFarland. Now, it has been a few weeks removed since we came on this show and had the conversation about being qualified to run on big tracks, and this mainly stemmed from the conversation after Cletus McFarland's first ever Truck Series start with Nice Motorsports at the season opener at Daytona, where McFarland didn't even make it to the lap 10 and spun coming out of turn 4, hitting the inside wall and basically ending his day. And after this race, a lot of people truly questioned that if McFarland was really ready, because the only prior time that he had inside a Truck Series, truck, was a test at Rockingham, which ultimately got him approved by NASCAR to compete at Daytona, which still, to this day, I still think that is a very silly thing to do, because comparing Rockingham to Daytona is not comparing apples to oranges. It's comparing apples to a 1995 Toyota Camry. Now, I know what you're thinking. Carter, that makes absolutely 0 sense. That's the point. They aren't comparable with each other. They are not comparable with each other. Running well in the test truck at Rockingham does not mean you are qualified to run in the pack at Daytona, which, of course, Cletus had competed at Daytona before in the ARCA Menard Series, but as we all know, the Truck Series and ARCA Series and their style of racing at that track are 2 completely different things, and you have to really acknowledge that. But now you're thinking to yourself, okay, well, Cletus can definitely spend a lot more time in ARCA after this and just gain more experience as time goes along. Nobody says that you can't compete at all, but just having more experience under the belt could help. Well, I guess that just doesn't apply anymore, which, listen, I'm sure Cletus McFarland, whose real name is Garrett Mitchell, who runs that YouTube channel, I'm sure he is a very amazing guy on and off the track. He's a great personality, too. He gives the, I'm ripping around the track like a bald eagle. Like, that was also great. That does not mean he should be in an O'Reilly Auto Parts Series car. I'm sorry, I don't like this move at all. And for Richard Childress Racing, I'm sure this is going to give the team a lot of attention when we go to Rockingham later on this spring. But if you're expecting this guy to immediately compete for top 5s and top 10s in this car, I'm sorry, that's not happening. That is just not happening. And, if this was like a short track, like let's say Martinsville or something like that, I would have been like, you know what? Fine. It's a short track. I mean, obviously a lot of chaos could go down there. What's the worst that can happen? This guy is competing at two super speedways. 2 out of his 3 starts this year will be on super speedways. Have we not learned anything? Like, I wish him, like, I really want him to do well in these starts, but, like, I'm trying to find words right now. As I'm doing this episode, I'm really trying to find the right words to describe, you know, this move. And a lot of people on social media are agreeing with the fact that this is not a good move. And this could end very poorly. Not saying that he'll get hurt or anything like that, or is it even safe, but if this guy is unable to handle pack racing in the truck series at Daytona, which is, if you ask me, already wild enough as it is, what makes you think he's going to handle a car that's a little bit faster, that moves a lot more, in a pack? So I'm very apprehensive with this personally. Um, but if he does well, he does well. So, genuinely a big shock from the NASCAR community, because if they said that they wanted to give him more truck starts and more ARCA starts, I would have been like, okay, fine. But like, this is, again, we are weeks away from being removed from this conversation about drivers being qualified to run in certain series and to run at certain tracks. Cletus McFarland, obviously he's well old enough to compete at every single, event if he wanted to, at every single track, but that does not mean he's going to keep up the same pace, and he's not going to keep up, doing what he needs to do. So I'm not really the biggest fan of this move, if you ask me in my personal opinion, but as with any driver making their O'Reilly Auto Parts Series debut, I wish Cletus McFarland nothing but the best. Now moving on to some interesting news that popped up when I was running errands today by the one and only Adam Stern. I feel like we haven't talked about Adam Stern on the podcast yet, but at least this season, I should say. But today is the day. But Adam Stern tweeted this out, that Monster Energy, of course, the Monster Energy, is in talks to sign an endorsement deal with Spire Motorsports driver Carson Hocevar. Per People Familiar, a move that would align the company with one of the sport's most talked about athletes. Wow, so if Carson Hocevar didn't already have big brands enough as it is with Spectrum Home Internet and Chili's Bar and Grill, get ready for a possible endorsement deal with one of the biggest energy drink brands in the entire world. In the article, it says that, it talks about the deal that Hocevar has with Spire Motorsports that would probably keep him in that seat in the 2030s. It says that now Monster is now negotiating with Hocevar to start endorsing the energy drink brand as soon as this season. Proposed financial terms couldn't be immediately learned. And he also mentions that, and I quote, "The deal would likely start on the driver's side with Hocevar, meaning it could include patches on his helmet or the sleeve of his fire suit, but wouldn't have a paint scheme or logo on Spire's number 77 Chevrolet that Hocevar drives. But given that Monster sponsors multiple organizations in NASCAR, the Hocevar link could blossom into a team relationship with Spire in time." Which is kind of already what we're seeing, what we kind of already saw with Red Bull getting back in the NASCAR as well, with sponsoring SVG and now Connor Zilch. Like, we saw them on the helmets, like they were Red Bull athletes, but we didn't get a full paint scheme of the car until just last year, with both those drivers being with Red Bull now being an official Trackhouse partnership with them. And that could very well happen here. Of course, Monster already had a presence in NASCAR after, Red Bull made its way back into the sport. But the energy drink wars in NASCAR are at an all-time high. You have Monster with the likes of, Ty Gibbs, Riley Herbst, Obviously, not the most exciting names in the field, but now possibly with Carson Hocevar, you have the Red Bull boys of SVG and Zilich. You have C4 Energy, which is now a big sponsor of Jesse Love. NOS Energy is still with Ricky Stenhouse Jr., and I believe Rockstar Energy is with Legacy Motor Club just as a sponsor as a whole between both John Hunter Nemechek and Eric Jones. And then, of course, Celsius is a big one as well with teams like Colleague Racing, and Corey Heim is a Celsius athlete as well. So the energy drink wars in NASCAR have never been more at an all-time high. And Form Energy as well. I forgot about Form being a partner with Hendrick Motorsports. So, yeah, the energy drink wars have never been at an all-time high. But let's talk about this deal real quick. Carson Hocevar, whether you love him or hate him, has brought a lot of attention to the sport. He's a very aggressive driver. He doesn't care how you feel. And he's going to put the intensity out on the racetrack week in and week out. When I think of Monster Energy, I think of intensity. When I think of Carson Hocevar, I think of intensity. So honestly, if you ask me, it definitely works. Of course, this deal is still in the consideration and negotiation deal, but what a big brand that Hocevar could definitely represent. And he's already done a great job as well, especially on the Chili side, where they recently unveiled a brand new Ride the Dente scheme, which absolutely looks beautiful. The black and white, I think, definitely rocks, so to speak. But he already does a good job representing his sponsors. He told the story about like how Spectrum was a big sponsor for him, you know, growing up through the racing ranks as well. And now Monster Energy possibly talking with him. I mean, you're talking about three big, widely known brands here, at least in the United States and some parts of the world as well. I would say that's really huge. So we'll see how this deal goes on from here, but big deal for if you are a big, massive Carson Hocevar fan. Also, some confirmed sponsorship news. Wix Filters will now be a primary sponsor for some races for Joe Gibbs Racing across the Cup and O'Reilly Auto Parts Series. It was announced today that Wix Filters will be an official partner for both Chase Briscoe and Brent Cruz. The statement reads as follows: Wix Filters is building on an almost 60 years of support for professional racing by announcing a multi-tier partnership with Joe Gibbs Racing's teams for the 2026 season. As the official filter for JGR, Wix Filters will be featured as the primary sponsor of Chase Briscoe's number 19 Toyota Camry at the first Cup Series points race in 30 years at North Wilkesboro on July 19th. Wix Filters will also be featured on the number 19 GR Supra for the NASCAR O'Reilly Auto Parts Series race at Las Vegas on March 14th, with Chase Briscoe behind the wheel. And then also at Watkins Glen International on May 9th with rising NASCAR star Brent Cruz. So Cruz and Briscoe getting more sponsorship deals. Brent Cruz, as we mentioned, a rising star throughout the NASCAR ranks, will be in that 19 car for JGR for a good majority of the year in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series. And then you have Chase Briscoe, who, of course, was a slam dunk signing by Joe Gibbs Racing last year, won 3 races, has also opened up a lot of sponsorship opportunities. Of course, he still has, Bass Pro Shops as one of his main sponsorship. We saw Columbia Bank come on and be a primary sponsor this past weekend at COTA. The Red Water, not seltzer, whatever it is, I forget the name of it, will also be a primary sponsor for him as well, including Zepp and a few others as well. So Joe Gibbs Racing continuing to get more partnerships in, and also we forgot to mention another Joe Gibbs Racing partnership this weekend with Ty Gibbs with AMPM, who was seen on the 11 last year for Joe Gibbs Racing and Denny Hamlin, will be the primary sponsor for Ty Gibbs this upcoming weekend in Phoenix. AMPM is the official, not the official, it's in a grocery store chain that's located mainly out west in some parts of California, Nevada, and Phoenix. So it's mainly a West Coast thing. And when I first saw AMPM, and somebody also mentioned this on Twitter, and I definitely agree, AMPM's logo makes you think that it's like some sort of like NyQuil or like medicine or something like that. Don't forget to take your AMPM at night, ladies and gentlemen. So I know I'm not funny, but Yep, Wilkes Filters sponsoring both Briscoe and Cruz for 2026 in their respective series. Now we're getting down to the end of the show, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, not the longest episode that we have had over the last couple of weeks. Last week's episode was in an hour, but we try to get 50 minutes to an hour because we believe in long episodes. So before we get down to the end, let's take a look at this weekend's schedule. The NASCAR Cup and O'Reilly Auto Parts Series head out west for their first West Coast Swain action of the season at Phoenix Raceway for the fourth race of their respective series this season. So let's take a look at the weekend schedule. No truck race this weekend. The truck series will not be back in action until Friday, March 20th at Darlington Raceway. So they will not be at either Phoenix or Las Vegas these next upcoming weeks. But let's take a look at the weekend schedule. If I can pull it up correctly, which I don't know why I'm having such a hard time doing it, but hey, it'll happen. So on this upcoming Friday on March 6th, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, practice for the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series will begin with qualifying following at 8:05 p.m. to set the field for Saturday night's race. You can stream all of that on the official CW app. And then Saturday, March 7th at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the fourth race of the O'Reilly Auto Parts 2026 season will take place at Phoenix Raceway. That will all take place live on CW Sports. As for the Cup Series race on Saturday at noon, practice will begin for the NASCAR Cup Series with qualifying following at 1:10 p.m. to set the field for Sunday's event. Both of those will be streaming on Prime Video. And then Sunday, March 8th at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the Straight Talk Wireless 500 will begin at Phoenix Raceway live on FS1. So that is what the weekend broadcast schedule will look like. And let's get into race picks for this weekend, ladies and gentlemen. Emma and Adam were both so kind to be giving me their picks for this weekend before recording, so thank you for that. But since I got my Tyler Reddick pick right for this week, I am able to pick first. So that's how it works with Cup picks. If you get it right, then you are able to pick first for this week. So Saturday's O'Reilly Auto Parts Series race at Phoenix. I will go first with my pick. This guy won here last fall, which was ultimately how he clinched the championship, and I believe he is going to win this race in order to get his first win of the 2026 season. So give me the 2-car of Jesse Love winning on Saturday night. For Emma's pick, she is going to go with a little bit of an underdog pick, actually. She is going to go with the 19-car of Brent Cruz. Brent Cruz will be back in the 19 this week. This will be his first oval race in the series, coming off a top 10 at Circuit of the Americas. So it'll be interesting to see what he does on the ovals. He actually won the ARCA Menard Series race here last year after being Brendan Queen to win it. And for Adam's pick, he is going to go with the 41 car of Sam Mayer to get the job done on Saturday night. And that's not a bad pick at all. Sam Mayer had a decent day at Circuit of the Americas. He was able to get his first top 10 finish of the year there. He currently sits 10th in points. So to recap, I have Jesse Love, Emma has Brent Cruz, and Adam has Sam Mayer. So a little bit of a divisive picks that we got going on here. But now, ladies and gentlemen, for the main event, the Straight Talk Wireless 500 on Sunday at Phoenix Raceway, I'm going to go first with my pick, ladies and gentlemen. You might be thinking to yourself, after I was so confident that Tyler Reddick was going to go 3-0 to start the year, that you're probably thinking, oh, he might pick Reddick again. I am going to pick a Toyota, but I believe Tyler Reddick's streak does come to an end this Sunday, but it will be another Toyota winning, and he's won the last 2 Spring Phoenix races here. Give me the 20 car of Christopher Bell to win at Phoenix this weekend. Christopher Bell seems to know how to get it done at the Spring Phoenix race. He won there in dominating fashion in 2024, and he won on a late race restart last year. So definitely knows how to get the victory lane in the desert. So I am picking Christopher Bell. For Emma, she is also going to stay on the JGR train, and she is going to go with a driver who got his first win at Phoenix Raceway back in 2022. She is going to pick the 19 car of Chase Briscoe to get his first win of the 2026 season. I could definitely see that for sure. Chase Briscoe, definitely very solid at Phoenix. Of course, he was able to get his first career win there when he was still driving for the now defunct Stewart-Haas Racing. So, very solid pick. And I originally thought Adam was going to derail from the Joe Gibbs Racing train and go with a guy like Ryan Blaney, who Blaney won the last time that we were at Phoenix, which Blaney won the season finale when Kyle Larson won the championship last year, which as of right now, that is Ryan Blaney's so far 17th career win in the Cup Series. But no, Adam is going to go with the guy who probably should have won at Phoenix last year in the fall. He is going to go with the 11 car of Denny Hamlin to win at Phoenix this Sunday. So we are all on the Joe Gibbs Racing train, actually. I guess this is where we all predict that the Gibbs cars are going to find their speed, which I have no doubt that these guys of Briscoe, Bell, and Hamlin will make the chase this year, so I have no doubt of that. But yeah, I don't know how many times you're going to see us on the Joe Gibbs Racing train, all three of us throughout the entire weekend. So there you go with that. But anyways, ladies and gentlemen, that will do it for race picks, and that will do it for this week's episode of Revved Up. Thank you guys so much for listening in, and be sure to follow us on our social media handles at @RevvedUp_pod. That is all lowercase on Twitter to learn about the newest updates regarding every single episode and news updates and whatnot. Tune in next week as we preview mile and a half racing action from the West Coast once again, as the teams will head out west once again to Las Vegas Motor Speedway when we preview for that. So, as always, I have been your host, Carter Leonard, and I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye.